In the frozen wilderness of Montana, where the wild once ruled, a lone mountain lion named Orion faced a world closing in on him. His home was vanishing. Fences, rifles, and machines replaced the rivers and prey he once knew. Desperate, he journeyed toward Yellowstone, unaware he was walking straight into human territory. There, an aging park warden, ranger, saw more than just a predator. He saw a survivor, a king without a kingdom. But could he save Orion from mankind's fear? Or was the wild no longer a place for creatures like him? Stay with us as this battle unfolds. Orion's golden eyes flickered in the dim morning light as he moved like a shadow through the towering pines. His muscles burned with exhaustion, his ribs pressed against his skin. But hunger was a cruel master. It forced him forward, deeper into the unknown. The once vast wilderness had become a dangerous maze of human fences, roaring machines and invisible boundaries. He had already skirted too close to a ranch the night before, the scent of cattle drawing him in. But before he could strike, a shot rang out. The bullet missed, but the warning was clear. He was no longer welcome. Now standing on the edge of Yellowstone National Park, he hesitated. The air carried new scents: wolves, elk, the lingering musk of grizzlies. But also something else, the undeniable presence of man. Orion had never feared them, but he had learned to respect their power. He had seen others of his kind vanish, their bodies left to rot in the cold dirt, their existence erased with a single pull of a trigger. Yet he had no choice. His paws ached from the hundreds of miles he had traveled, his body weak from hunger. If there was any place left for him, it was here. From a distance, Ranger, the park's oldest warden, watched through his binoculars. He had seen mountain lions before, but this one was different. The way he moved, cautious but unbroken, told Ranger everything. This was a survivor, a drifter forced from his land, just like too many others before him. The younger Rangers would see a threat, but Ranger saw something else, a story not yet finished. But the wild had its own rules. A lone mountain lion in unfamiliar territory was as much a danger to himself as he was to others. And if he got too close to humans, he wouldn't last long. Could Ranger protect Orion before it was too late? Or had the world already decided his fate? The first time Ranger saw Orion up close, the mountain lion was little more than a ghost in the morning mist. The cat stood at the tree line, muscles tensed, golden eyes locked onto the old warden. For a moment, neither moved. It was a silent standoff. Man and beast, two relics of a world that was fading fast. Orion didn't growl, didn't charge. He simply watched, weighing his odds, deciding whether this human was a threat or something else entirely. Ranger exhaled slowly, keeping his movements calm. The younger Rangers would have reached for their rifles by now, but he didn't. He had seen too many animals put down simply for existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. Orion was different. He wasn't some reckless predator wandering too close to a campsite. He was a survivor, a king without a throne, desperately searching for a new home. And Yellowstone, for all its rules and regulations, wasn't built for creatures like him anymore. But the park wasn't safe either. The wolves had their own territories, and the massive grizzlies wouldn't hesitate to challenge a lone lion over a fresh kill. Then there were the humans, the tourists who marveled at nature from their cars, unaware of the silent wars happening just beyond the tree line. If Orion was spotted too close to the lodges or campgrounds, the park officials wouldn't hesitate to take action. And that usually meant one thing: relocation, or worse, Ranger had spent decades balancing the thin line between preservation and control. He knew the higher-ups wouldn't see Orion the way he did. To them, he was a problem to be solved. But to Ranger, he was proof of something greater, a testament to survival, a living reminder of a time when wild things still ruled the land. As Orion turned, vanishing back into the shadows, Ranger knew one thing for certain. If he wanted to save this lion, he had to act fast. Because in a world that no longer made space for creatures like Orion, time was running out. Orion was running out of time. The first snowfall had dusted the ground overnight, coating the Yellowstone wilderness in an eerie, silent white. Food was getting scarce, and the fresh scent of wolves lingered in the air. He had already crossed into their territory once, an encounter that had left him with a deep claw mark on his shoulder. He was strong, but he wasn't invincible. And now the humans were closing in too. Ranger had seen the reports. Unidentified mountain lions spotted near Lamar Valley. Large predator tracks found too close to tourist areas. The warnings were coming faster, and with each one the risk to Orion grew. The park officials wouldn't wait much longer. A relocation team had already been assembled, and if that didn't work, Ranger knew what the next step would be. It always ended the same way, with a dart, a cage, and a one-way trip to a sanctuary or worse. But Orion wasn't a problem to be solved. He was a survivor, a living remnant of the wild that was vanishing right before their eyes. Ranger couldn't let them take him. Not like this. That night he made a decision. He grabbed his coat, loaded up his truck, and drove out toward the ridge where he had last seen the lion. The cold wind cut through the trees, and the snow crunched beneath his boots as he stepped out, scanning the darkness. Then he saw them, fresh tracks leading toward the valley. Orion was still here, but so were the others. A single rifle shot echoed in the distance. The relocation team was moving in. Ranger's heart pounded. If he didn't act now, Orion's fight for survival would end before dawn. And as he stepped forward into the frozen night, he knew one thing. He was willing to risk everything to save this lion. The gunshot shattered the silence. Ranger froze, his breath a cloud in the freezing night air. His heart pounded as he scanned the ridgeline, searching for movement. Somewhere out there, Orion was running for his life, and if the relocation team had their way, this would be the last night he spent as a free creature. He moved quickly, following the fresh tracks in the snow. The mountain lion's prints were deep. He had been moving fast, maybe even limping. The wound from his last wolf encounter had slowed him down, and now that weakness could cost him everything. Ranger clenched his fists. He had spent his life protecting animals like Orion, ensuring balance between humans and the wild. But this wasn't balance. This was extermination dressed up as conservation. Another shot rang out, this time closer. Ranger swore under his breath and picked up his pace. He knew how these things went. The team would tranquilize Orion, cage him, and haul him off to some faraway sanctuary. But Orion wasn't meant for a cage. He had survived too much, fought too hard, just to become a prisoner of human interference. Then in the distance, movement, a dark silhouette against the snowy landscape. Orion. He was crouched low, his sides heaving, his breath visible in the cold. His golden eyes locked onto Ranger, aware, calculating. He wasn't sure if this man was friend or foe, but he was out of options. Behind him, voices, flashlights cut through the night. The team was closing in. Ranger knew he had seconds to act. If Orion ran, they would track him down. If he stayed, they'd take him. The only way out was through trust, a fragile, dangerous thing between man and beast. Slowly, Ranger removed his gloves and stretched out his hand. "Come on, big guy," he murmured. "It's now or never." The mountain lion didn't move. And then, just as the first beam of light swept over them, Orion made his choice. For a single breathless moment, time stood still. Orion's golden eyes flickered between Ranger and the approaching lights. The voices were getting louder, boots crunching through the snow. If the lion made the wrong move, this would be the end. Then, he moved. Not away, not toward the team, but toward Ranger. Slow, deliberate. His muscles were tense, his breath sharp. It wasn't submission, it was something else. A decision, a fragile thread of trust between a wild predator and the only man who had ever stood between him and a cage. Ranger didn't hesitate. He knew what had to be done. He took a step between Orion and the searchlights, his heart pounding. He could see the shapes of the Rangers now, rifles slung across their shoulders, tranquilizer darts loaded. "Hold your fire," he barked, raising a hand. The team hesitated, confused. "We got orders to take him in, Ranger," one of them called out. "Not like this," he shot back. "Not while he's already half-starved and injured. If you cage him now, you kill what's left of him." The lead Ranger stepped forward, shaking his head. "Come on, you know the rules. He's too close to human territory. It's either relocation or..." He didn't need to finish. Ranger knew the alternatives. Behind him, Orion let out a low, guttural growl. Not a threat, but a warning. He understood what was happening. He knew what was at stake. Ranger turned back, his voice firm. "Give me a week, just 1 week to track him, to make sure he moves deeper into the park. If he comes back, I won't stop you." The team exchanged glances. Then after a long pause, the lead Ranger exhaled sharply. "1 week," he muttered. "That's all you get." The flashlights turned away, boots retreating into the night. As silence settled over the snow-covered valley, Ranger turned to Orion. "All right, big guy," he murmured. "Let's get you home." The deal had been made. 1 week, 7 days to guide Orion away from human sight, away from the looming threat of relocation, or worse. Ranger knew it wasn't much time, but it was all he had. And out here, in the unforgiving wild, every second counted. The first night was the hardest. Orion didn't trust easily, and he had no reason to. He had spent his life surviving on instinct, relying only on himself. But now, injured and hungry, he followed Ranger at a distance, just far enough to escape if needed. The snow muffled their steps as they moved deeper into the park, away from the tourist lodges, away from the search teams. Ranger could feel the lion's eyes on him, watching, calculating. Was this a trick? Was this man leading him into another trap? But Ranger had no leash, no rifle, no cage, only patience. By the third day, Orion was stronger. The wound on his shoulder had stopped bleeding, and he had started hunting again. Small prey, nothing big yet. Ranger found the carcass of a hare near their makeshift resting spot. The snow around it painted in streaks of red. It was a good sign. The lion was regaining his strength. By the 6th day, Orion had moved beyond the valley, deeper into the heart of Yellowstone, where the ridges stretched for miles and the rivers ran wild. This was where he belonged, where no fences, no bullets, no men could decide his fate. On the 7th morning, Ranger tracked him to a high ridge, watching as Orion stood at the edge, the wind lifting his fur. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The message was clear. He had made it. Ranger exhaled, a quiet satisfaction settling in his chest. The lion was free, and as he turned back toward his truck, he knew he'd never forget the beast that had once been a ghost in the snow. Orion's story is more than just survival. It's about the delicate balance between freedom and control, nature and civilization. Like the lion, we all face moments where the world seems to push us into cages, whether they're made of rules, expectations, or fear. But true strength lies in perseverance, in finding our own path despite the odds. Ranger's compassion reminds us that understanding, not dominance, is what truly bridges the gap between worlds. In life, we must learn when to step in, when to step back, and most importantly, when to let go, because some things are meant to remain wild and free,